Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Professor Eli, and today I am going to teach you the ethics of rage bait. Now, if you will give me a second, I'm going to take my trusty pencil, and I'm going to take the very trusty and always true board. Now, I've heard that you boys are having a dispute, and the best way to solve disputes are, of course, with the truth, all right? True academics. And that is what I'm going to be teaching today. So, rage bait is a portmanteau of the word rage and the word bait. All right? Now, rage is a word that means uncontrolled anger. And bait is a word that means something that is put out. Something that is used to lure. Whether it be the bait on the end of a line, or, in this case, the bait that somebody will give to another. We will call the suppressor the rage baiter, and the suppressed the rage baited. Now, keep those two words in mind. Now, rage bait can exist in more than one form, you see. Now, the most common form of rage bait, we must come up with a word for it, but for now, we're just going to define it as the type of rage bait that occurs whenever somebody says something and expects it to be serious. Says something unserious and treats it seriously, as a serious attack against somebody. And therefore, the other person feels they must defend it, and it keeps on going on until the other person is very mad. The other most common and older form of this word is to troll. Now, there are much more subtler ways of trolling, so we will draw two paths. There is griefing, is what I would describe it as, and mucking around. That's what we're going to call it, mucking around. So, we've got griefing and mucking around. And griefing is explosive. And mucking around is overtime. Griefing tries as hard as it can to get the person angry. The rage baiter is going to want to fire every load they can at the rage baited until they just get so mad that they have to respond. And mucking around is much more subliminal. Trying to weasel their way into the consciousness of the person they are trying to rage bait to slowly make them develop this sort of complex, this sort of idea about themselves that they need to stand up for themselves. So, now, the rage bait signs. This is the most important part of my lesson, class. So, what are some signs that you are being either griefed or mucked about at? Well, let's start number one. And these can be useful either if you are trying to rage bait somebody, or if whenever you are rage baited, you feel like you're about to get griefed or mucked around at. So, number one. This is the nonchalant move. The most basic. Number two is the ad hominem. And a three is long or short. Now, these are the very basic ones. There's a lot more. But I think that these three are very good to understanding what rage baiting is about. So, rage baiting is trying to get three goals. As you can see, I have written them down, so take notes. So, number one, the nonchalant. Now, this is where a person rage bait somebody. Say, Bob says to Jim, Jim, I do not like your haircut. And Jim can reply with two things. And now keep in mind now that nonchalant can be mistaken for not engaging, unengagement. So what is an unengaging answer to that question? To that, not so much a question, of course. Rage bait never is a question. It's always an attack. But what is a good answer to not get rage baited? It's, I'm sorry to hear that. Now, of course, these answers can quickly develop into nonchalantness, because then the rage baiter can reply with more. And if you continue replying instead of just walking away, that's when it starts to become nonchalant. It starts to become, I'm sorry, bro, but I really don't want to mess with you today. And actually, you're not rage baiting me at all. If you acknowledge the fact that they are trying to rage bait you, that's the point where it's gone too far, okay? So, we'll just pretend like I wrote something down. That is what it is to be rage baited nonchalantly. To develop this sense of, if I keep a good character, the rage bait will not work. Whenever the real goal of rage bait is, of course, to get you to respond. That's what mucking around is. Alright? It builds it up over time. Alright? So if you keep responding, that is, of course, a form of rage bait, because the trolling is working. So then if we have the ad hominem, this is the next step. It's often used in griefing. It happens in griefing. This is what ad hominem is like. Jim says to Bob, hey, Bob, I don't like your hair. And Bob replies with, bro, you are not employed to say that. You have awful hair yourself. Now, this is a form of ad hominem because the fact that Jim has bad hair does not mean that Bob does not have bad hair. All right? That doesn't mean anything. And sometimes ad hominem even goes as far as to also say something completely unrelated. Like, you've done awful things. You said awful things to me recently. Like he said, Bob, your wife smells like poop. Like that, for example. If Jim said that to Bob, then Bob should have no reason to say that because it has nothing to do with that. Sure, it is true that people that tend to say a lot of bad things tend to be bad people, but that doesn't mean that they can't make true statements, all right? No matter how bad of a person, they can always make a true statement. And the character from before that, while it makes it more likely, does not make it impossible for them to say something bad. Understood? In short, the rage baiter, what they're saying, cannot be proven false by attacking the person in one of those ways. That, of course, is getting rage baited. Now, number 3, the long or short. This is most commonly replied to, most commonly the rage bait technique that you see in movies, TV shows, and especially online, in places like Twitter. Now, the long and short is altogether, whenever somebody doesn't shut up in just one message, all right? If Jim were to online say to Bob, you are ugly in real life, and Bob starts off with the nonchalant technique, moves on to ad hominem, this is likely the last step. He says an extremely long response. Now, the short form that I mentioned here, that is, of course, the potential they will just keep on saying short things until the rage baiter gives up, in which case you've won, but sloppily. Truly, the long or short is indeed something to keep in mind whenever you are being rage baited, because it gives you a bad look, all right? If Bob were to say all those things, well, now Jim has accomplished his goals. He successfully rage baited. In fact, let me get my pencil out and my trusty dusty little piece of paper right here. This is the final, this is the final goal, to get them to say some kind of statement. And then they can even repeat that over and over again, going back to the nonchalant, but in a longer way. The ad hominem especially. Now, altogether, rage bait will always end with one side forfeiting. Either the rage baiter gets tired, or the rage baited starts to realize that what they are doing is getting rage baited, and they just leave, and they don't come back. Except for one thing. I will draw on one more thing. That is the cycle. First off is the attempt. This is whenever a rage baiter tries to bait somebody. And they take the bait, which that is an external thing that happens one time. So just keep that in mind. Then rage, whether it be grief or annoyance, not really. Grief, annoyance, or trying to uphold a nonchalant attitude. That's the other one. Then, of course, leaving. Then, remembrance. Now, the baited often see that the rage baiter will leave one more thing just to mess with them again. Or if the rage baited have successfully discerned that they are being rage baited and leave, the rage baiter might pull out another ad hominem against them. And then they will remember that that has been said and maybe continue the cycle. This happens quite a bit from what I've seen. Everybody's had it happen to them. But overall, that completes our lesson on rage bait. Overall, we can say that rage bait is something that is quite avoidable as long as you are smart about it, and can be very fun if you are the rage baiter. But frankly, sometimes annoying if you were the rage baited until you realize that they were just messing around. Except if they're grieving. Thank you so much. This has been Professor Eli. I hope that this helps to discourage the amount of rage bait. And one final note, there are some who may think that this lesson is getting rage baited because of rage bait that has been happening. And the inspiration whenever I rage baited somebody. But to answer that, you are mine. Thank you for watching. Goodbye. Have a good day.